want to welcome everyone to this session of our Q&A series brought to you by the Costa Rica Project and the the Association of Responsible Detoxification International, which we affectionately call ARDI. My name is Carolyn, and I have Marco here, and we are one of the many, many students and of Dr. Robert Morris and alumni of the International School of Detoxification, and we're representing the Costa Rica Project today. I'd like to welcome you, Marco.
Thank you, Carolyn. Always a pleasure.
Thank you. I really, really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us today. What we're going to talk about is how we got together after level 2 last year in October and what we did to begin to form ourselves as an organization. And we got really, really excited, of course, as you know, from level 2 last year. And when we got back, we started meeting. So once we started meeting, we started asking questions about okay, so now where do we go from here? And Hector Brito, who was one of the students at level 2, suggested that we begin to read a book. And the book's title is Tribal Leadership. The subtitle is Leveraging Natural Groups into Thriving Organizations. So, of course, we wanted to become a thriving organization. And so we said, okay, this looks like a book that might benefit us. So we essentially did like a book study together, didn't we?
Right.
Yeah. And so as we all started to dive into the book, we started to notice that it was personally life-changing for us, but it also helped to bring us together as a core team working on developing what now exists as the Costa Rica Project and ARDI. So tell me, once you started reading the book, how did that impact you? What changed for you?
Well, I think I'm going to be forever grateful to Hector. Hector, thank you. Hector, thank you for suggesting that book. Because initially I was a bit reluctant to read it. I thought another corporate book. Here we go. I don't want to read it. I don't like that kind of stuff. But Hector explained to me that it's actually the opposite of a corporate book, even though it might be dressed up like that. The essence is the opposite. And I read it, and I guess like all good books, it touches you. You relate to it. And that's what happened with me. And the book talks about 5 stages of, I don't know, what would you say? 5 stages of development, leadership? Well, how would you?
Yeah, it's all of those things. It's identifying a group of people who are working together. A lot of times because it does take on the stages within a corporate setting, there's this culture that begins to emerge when a group of people come together and hang together for any length of time, which, of course, when you have a job, you do, at least 8 hours a day together, right? So there's this culture. And so it begins to identify what that culture can look like and how to move it along a developmental path. So, yeah.
Yeah, it talks about 5 stages, and the first stage, it described as people who are pretty, I don't know how to describe it really, who might be described as people in gangs on the streets, and they are people that it described as having, that they think life's just bad. Life is bad, and that's why they do what they do, because it doesn't, from their perspective, it doesn't really matter what they do. Life is bad. Everyone's against them, and they have to survive, and that's the way that they survive. And I thought, okay, I can not relate to that, but I can understand. I can appreciate that perspective. Then they said there was a level 2, and the level 2 really hit home with me because or stage 2, I used to work for a finance company, and I felt this, and a lot of people around me felt this. And stage 2 is someone where actually your life's okay. You think that your life's okay. Your life's actually as good as it can be, perhaps. But your work, you don't like it, and you feel that nothing's moving forward. You feel that perhaps the organization, your bosses, it's it makes you feel negative. It's like it doesn't really matter what effort I'm putting into this, nothing's going to change. And then you attract other people that feel the same way, and it's all quite a cynical environment. And I think many people feel like that if certain circumstances come to be in a certain way. Um,
Yeah, I think one of the words that describes that type of character is the victim. It's like a victim mentality. It's
that's a
like,
good point.
yeah, I'm
That's a good
here at
point.
work and, I have to be here and I don't like being here, but, I have to work to pay the bills and support my family and all of that. So,
That's right. That's right. A victim mentality. I like that. I like that. That's very true. Um, and then from a stage two, you move to a stage three, and that happens sometimes when you get a promotion. And we'll use somebody in sales, selling anything. I guess that's a good example of a stage three. But let me just talk about that. So you get your stage three, and then life gets better. Your job gets better, and it gets better because of what you're doing. You find out you're a great salesperson. You're selling great units, and perhaps you look back at people at stage two, whether you recognize yourself as being that or not. But you almost now see, look, I'm doing really good now. Life's good. My job is great. Look, I'm selling so many units a day, an hour, and those people, and I used to be one of them, so I speak from experience. They're just not working hard enough. They didn't get that promotion. Look at me. I'm proof. So that's where it is. And that's quite a significant stage. I think there's nothing wrong with any of these stages. It's just shining a light on them. Um,
yeah,
and
it's almost like at this point you see personal achievement and the ego gets a bit stroked. You start to take a little bit more of a center stage. In stage three, it's more like it's about me now.
right, right, and then when you look at the broader picture, you see there's a lot of stage three, right? And society, Western society at least, promotes stage three. It's all about you, well done, you got your degree, oh, aren't you great? And then if you look, especially now, a lot of our lives are online. You look at some people on YouTube, and they've got so many hits, and people that don't have those many hits want to have those many hits. It's all about me. And again, there's nothing wrong with it,
Right.
but
It's
that's
like you have achieved some personal success.
right.
A lot of times, what you'll see is people will leave the corporate world and they'll start their own business and they'll become self employed. And now it becomes all about them and their business and what they're selling or promote, how they're out there servicing the world.
Right, right. And I think a lot of schooling um, promotes that kind of thinking, and capitalism, I guess. I don't know, but it's all around us, isn't it? It's all around us. It's buying stuff for me, stuff, stuff, stuff. There's that the story of stuff on the internet. It's all about that.
And I think another important aspect is the competition because now I have a territory and I have to preserve and protect and build my territory, because that's now, how I'm getting the feedback as to I'm great. And therefore, I pit myself against the others out there who do things like myself. And we become, even though we can be friendly, in terms of we're in the same industry and we're colleagues and all of that, there's still this underlying current of like, it's me against them because I need to be about me and building my business.
And that's right. That's right. You're absolutely right. It really does, at the end of the day, fall on the individual, as you said, the ego, um, how many likes you have on Facebook, on your Facebook page, or how many people in your Facebook group, or how many Twitter followers you have. It's all about that kind of thing. Um, and of course, I think many of us recognize that too, as we've just spoken about. So moving on from
Can I say one more thing? Sorry,
yeah,
I've been.
please.
But it's like in stage three, it's like an individual kind of has to move through stage three at some level, because that's when you begin to develop that sense of, I have a product, even if the product is me, and, I build my confidence and I see that, I have something to offer. Success is what then is allows you to then be able to move into a stage four, which go ahead then.
Yes, Stage four was quite a revelation for me. Stage four is when one works through stage three, and sometimes, because it evidently not a guarantee, but sometimes one realizes that the power, the yearning to achieve, you suddenly realize I can't do it on my own. I can't. There are only so many hours in the day. There's only so many TVs I can sell in a week. It doesn't matter how great I am. Time and life has put a limit. There's only so many clients I can see in a day, in a week, in a month. And I guess when you're very successful at stage three, you hit that ceiling and you realize that. And even if there are many factors, but you realize that there's something more to achieve and you can't do it. You come to a realization, epiphany, that you can't do it alone. And that's when you go to a stage four and you almost, well, you realize that it's not about me, it's about me and someone else, a team, and together we can do much more. And it's almost you're releasing the individuality, and it really is. You're embodying the team. I watched a TV series actually, but the whole series was about divers. They were diving for pirate wrecks, Captain Kidd and everything off the coast of Madagascar. It was fascinating. And they were finding all sorts of treasures and all sorts of stuff. But I was looking at these divers and they were really so excited. I mean, it was like they were saying, this is my life's work. Here it is. But they were all amazing divers, but they know it wasn't even something they had to share. And you could see that they can't do this on their own. You can't do a dive of a wreckage on your own. You need a team, and the team needs to check your breathing equipment. Your colleague does, and you check their breathing equipment. You're trusting each other with everything, and you know that you work as one, and that's it. That's the way it is. Can't do it on your own. It's not even on their radar. And that really, I don't know if you can call that stage 4 or 5. We can talk about stage 5 in a moment. In the book, the Tribal Leadership book, they spoke to stage 4 about, they were describing rather stage 4 as people who were achieving these great things together as a unit, but I think they thought stage 4 was the last stage they were at. And they were talking like people like Microsoft and Apple, and what drove them perhaps was their competitors. So Microsoft would look at Apple, what are they producing? Okay, let's together produce something better. And then Apple are looking okay, let's produce something even better. And so it keeps going. And you can see from that, even Microsoft and Apple, both are achieving great things, and everyone else. And you can see what drives them, and that's really a stage 4. What would you add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, those are good examples. I think maybe Google and Zappos, which started out as a shoe store, I think it's now, excuse me, expanded into clothing, but they actually have this book on audio on their, they were so impacted as an organization by this book that they've uploaded it as an audio on their website, which we'll put a link to in the About section
Right.
on our YouTube channel here. But yeah, it's like it's like, okay, you come to a point where you realize that can do so much more when you act as a team than you could as an individual. And the other thing that I would add is my own personal story is that I was I've been in private practice for over 15 years, and I got to a point where I just kind of, came to the end of myself. I had had certain level of achievement and success on my own in private practice, and I got to the point where it's like I want to be in a community of people, and I lost interest in just being a single solo. And so that was part of the motivation I had to move on to stage 4, was just kind of, I don't know if I could call it boredom, but it was sort of like I came to a plateau in my growth, my own personal professional growth, that I felt like I could move on and learn more if I would begin to develop a team. And so the idea of creating a wellness center came into being at that point. So that's kind of what happened for me in stage 3. I'm thinking that because of my own personal experience, there comes a point where there may be this kind of plateau after a while for people in stage 3, especially those who are waking up, a bit consciously about the idea that, we're to be living in relationship with one another, not so much in isolation and competition.
That's the book describes that that you have to go through each stage to get to the next stage. Would you agree with that?
It seems so. It seems like there needs to at least be some underpinning of development where you have a sense of what the stage is prior to the one that you're currently developing in, that you have a sense of what it's like to be in those other stages. So, just like any other kind of developmental process, those end up being like foundation pieces,
Right.
or
Right.
what take you on to the next stage.
And then the book describes that really that's when they were at the authors were at the end of the book, and they thought, well, this is it. We've discovered the 4 stages, and I think they were going to wrap up. And I think they were, correct me if I'm wrong, Carolyn, they were dealing with a pharmaceutical company, and they were talking about how everyone works together and everyone knows their place and everyone is valued and everyone knows that they're a part of the big picture. And they went in, I think on their final day or something, and they asked somebody, who is your competitor? Because, Apple, Microsoft, and all this kind of stuff. So who's your competitor? And they were expecting another pharmaceutical company to be brought up. And they said, we don't really look at it like that. Our competitor, they said, is cancer. And we want to change the world. We want to produce something that no one's ever produced before. And for the authors of the Tribal Leadership book, it turned everything on its head. This perspective that they had of not recognizing the I don't want to say what's the word, Karen? Not the opponent, but a competitor. Not recognizing the competitor on your radar and just striving ahead, almost not. It doesn't matter what they do. We're doing this, and that's all that matters. And that turned the author's ideas on their head, and they named this appropriately stage 5. And stage 5 is when you're doing just that. So the thing that comes to mind for me is somebody like NASA. NASA don't, in my eyes anyway, I'm not really a real space buff. I guess I have a general interest like most people do, but NASA, in my eyes, don't have any competitors, I guess, other than other countries with their own space agencies. But they're really, generally speaking, now people are talking about going to Mars and having a colony on Mars and whatever. There's no comparison to that. You're doing groundbreaking. You're at the cutting edge of humanity almost, and that's stage 5. You're not looking
Yeah,
at
where real innovation begins to take place, because now people aren't thinking about anything about us against them, even if it's like, a competition between a pharmaceutical company and cancer, or for instance, in our community, we tend to say, we're not in competition with each other because we're bonded by the message that we've received about go out and change the world with the message of detoxification and whatnot. But we do tend to sometimes pit ourselves against an enemy such as the government, broken institutions like the medical, the educational, the judicial systems. The fact that we don't, we're pitted against this, our freedoms for speech and our rights. We tend to still have that little bit of an angst, even though it's not, it's more conceptual or philosophical in terms of who our competition is.
Right.
The stages beyond even take us past all of that to say that there is just a wonder in the universe for when we just are able to let go of all of those notions that there's anything that's competitive to ourselves, that we're just out there being able to fully co-create in this world whatever it is that we deem valuable to go out and try to achieve. And that's really where we're kind of bringing this base fountain, if you will, that we're hoping gains momentum so that we have a real gusher, if you will, that goes out there into the universe to really impact it with the love and light and all of the things that we talk about from a conscious living standpoint.
And you said something that rang a little bell with me. We have to, and just because anybody might be at stage 4 or stage 5, it doesn't mean they can't slip back. And you were talking about the government, broken institutions, the system, these things that some of us sometimes feel that are there every day. We have to be careful and be very mindful of not falling back into a victim mentality, because it's so easy, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah, we're kind of indoctrinated to think that way,
right.
In a way. I mean, there's so much propaganda that keeps us thinking about, lack. That's what whole advertising is really trying to get you to buy something that you don't have, that they give you the perception that you really need it in order to be happy and satisfied. And so where we're hoping that we can attract, by being this, that we're talking about at stage 5 and 6, as we begin to practice orienting ourselves around it, living it, and doing our projects around it, that we then magnetize those people who kind of get that they want to play at that level. And in doing so, then we create this great wellspring fountain that I mentioned, and can begin to affect the world as we get out there and co-create the magnificent and amplify the great creator as we co-create something that's beyond anything that we could do as an individual at any of the former stages, even in our smaller teams. I mean, it's like the team then goes into a developmental stage itself.
That's right. That's an important point, actually, because the team goes. There's stages of team development, and I'm sure many people are familiar with those things. How teams, even as you say, the team as a unit goes through different stages, and it's good to be mindful of those things in any team, because sometimes you can see that as something more than it is, whether it's just a stage. Like sometimes you get squabbling in a team and differences, and that's all okay, because that's a part of it. And I don't think there's any team that's ever not been there.
And so that brings up another, I think, important aspect. It's not necessarily focused on the stages so much, but we've kind of now opened up the door to talk about a significant part of the book, which was, as a group, you begin to identify what is what they called a noble cause. It's like your vision statement, only it's got, as you can tell by the name of the title, noble cause, it's like it's got some more passion involved with it. than just a vision statement. And so when a group begins to identify what is the noble cause, then when you get into the team development phases, it's your frustrations perhaps with other individuals who, have certain things that they may that may rub you the wrong way or whatever. You don't quit because you're frustrated or don't like the way that feels, because you're not focused on the other individuals on the team. What we're focused on is our noble cause. And when we can do that, it helps us to then just allow those feelings to have a rightful place. Like, these are just sort of my feelings, but what's more important to me is the noble cause. So I can absorb a lot of this other stuff that I'm feeling that might not feel the best working with individuals, but for the noble cause, I can do anything because of my passion for it. So I can overcome whatever little things might be the obstructions. And that is a part of team development. That's part of our personal development within team development. And I think we all have, these edges. We're diamonds in the rough in a way. And so we're all kind of working on our own things. And it's in the relationships that we have with one another where these rough spots end up, helping us shine up that diamond, right? So I think we really need each other in order for us to have the personal development as well. Like I said in my own story, it's like, okay, I could only go so far with myself. I felt like I really needed to get with a team and working. And this last year has been incredibly helpful to me in terms of developing more leadership skills, getting myself more organized, learning how to work in relationship, gaining greater acceptance for all individuals, developing my love quotient. All of that has been tremendously valuable for me personally. And I just want to thank Hector and you all on the core team for having gone through this book, describing, we've talked tremendously amount about this book in our meetings, and all of that has been so helpful. And I think it's been part of what has allowed us to survive as long as we have over this last year, because we were focused on the noble cause over any kind of personal dramas that we were creating. And we pulled through a lot of times when it would have been just easy to quit. But we knew that we were bonded by a different passion to create this legacy for conscious and healthy living that is enduring. So thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn. Thank you. So we're going to put the link from Zappos that Carolyn mentioned, where you can get a legitimate free audio copy of this book and listen to it. We really urge you to do it. If you don't have the time, we hope this video has helped. And if you have any questions, you can email us at the Costa Rica project@gmail.com, and of course you can leave a comment as well. Carolyn, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Marco, as always.
Take care. See you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.